J-Lo create vibes now.
Welcome to another episode of the Get a Love Like Mine podcast. We are your humble hosts. I'm Kesha Amos. This is my beautiful husband, Sam Amos. We hope that you guys enjoyed our premiere episode. We know it's been a minute, but we're going to try to get back into giving you content once a week. If it's not once a week, charge it to our heads, not our hearts. We just, have some busy schedules around here.
Absolutely.
But, just in keeping with what we discuss, if you guys are new to the podcast, we discuss family, marriage, relationships, friendships, parenting, and we discuss it from a perspective of how God moves in your life when life is going on. So this week we kind of had a pretty busy week, but anyway, we were watching the news, and this story came on the news and really touched our hearts to the point where we felt like it would be a good topic. So you can tell them.
One of the issues that we will discuss from time to time is like current events, things that are in the news. Like I know we did a podcast on R. Kelly at one time and some other things, but I saw this story in the news, and you see stories so often that domestic violence, and this particular story, like the names are not important, but there was a husband and wife. They had been married for some time. They had kids that were grown. Some of them were, some of them weren't. But they were going through a divorce. And so one of the older kids knew that, there was abuse in the home. Mm-hmm. And the dad had been abusing the mom. And so that older kid went and purchased a townhome for the mom so that she would have somewhere to go and kind of like get away from the abuse. Well, they didn't tell the dad where it was. Mm-hmm. So he found out, he followed her, I don't know, maybe from work or some kind of way, he found the location, and he went and shot the place up, and he ended up killing her. Wow. And so this is local. This just happened like a week ago. And the husband, I read in the story that he had been dealing with some mental health issues, and so this divorce was kind of like really hard on him or whatever. But at the last that I saw of it, he still was on the run. They never had captured him. And so, like, it really touched my heart to hear the kid on the news. They was like, well, she wants to give a message to her dad, saying,
this is the kid that bought the house for the mom?
Right. Mm-hmm. She's on the news, tears in her eyes, she's crying. She says, Dad, please turn yourself in. I would rather have one dead parent and one in jail than to have both of my parents dead. So please turn yourself in. I couldn't imagine having to give that message to one of my parents, but like that's really tough to deal with.
That is unfortunately becoming a regular thing. Like when I saw the story, I thought that was how it was going to end, that he killed himself as well. Like that's how things have been going lately. You see couples who they seem like a happy couple, and then you have no clue what's going on behind closed doors, and you find out that there's been abuse, and then one of them, usually the woman, is trying to end things, and it results in both of them being deceased, murder-suicide. You mentioned the mental illness portion, and I just kind of feel like that's common, but at the same time, it's not always the case. It sometimes it is just a level of I snapped and I did something to her, And now that I'm in the house or I'm in the car or wherever we are and I'm seeing her dead, I don't have any other reason to live, or I can't face the public. I can't face the scrutiny. I can't face the having to go to prison. I can't face her family. I can't face our kids for them to know that I killed you. You know, part of what I feel like sometimes men in that situation look at women as property. It's almost like, if I can't have you, no one can have you. But they never consider the carnage, what they're leaving behind. So I don't know how many kids this couple had, but they clearly at least had a daughter who they have left behind. And this girl has to deal with the fact that I bought this house for my mom trying to protect her, but this ended up being her final resting place. Like, this ended up being the house and now she's stuck with a house. You know what I'm saying? She wasn't living there. So now she's got this house that she bought or rented or whatever. And now she's got to try to sell that house or whatever she's going to do with it. Who wants to buy a house that somebody died in? You know, a crime scene. You got to go in and get this cleaned up. Like, no one thinks about the aftermath of things like that.
Part of that story, I didn't mention this, with the mental health, the dad called that daughter and said, "Can you call 911? I've shot your mom."
Wow.
Like, man, that's tough, right? So, man, it's just no good.
I didn't know that part to the story, but I mean, that is. It's just crazy that is what the world is coming to. But like I said, you see that all the time now. I don't recall things being that way when we were younger and coming up. But, I mean, how do you think that comes about? I'm thinking of a situation specifically where I didn't know them personally, but I know a little bit of the story where someone, they were dating. I don't think they were married, but they had a child together, and she was trying to leave. She was in the process of leaving, and he ended up killing her and himself. But he was a kind of what you would call a stand-up citizen. He, worked a respectable job. He was a supervisor there. None of their, other than her family and close friends, none of their friends or coworkers, anybody like that, knew that anything like this was brewing. And he wasn't abusive. He was a cheater. She was leaving because of the cheating, not because of anything, like she felt she was in danger. She finally had just mustered up enough nerve to leave because of him cheating, and he killed her and himself. And like I said, he was for all intents and purposes, he was a stand-up person, minus the cheating. But where do you think that, what could make a person click to the point of that?
I don't really understand. I'll never understand how death or murder or suicide is a solution. I don't know how that solves anything. If you have parents, kids, brothers, sisters, all these people are going to feel the aftermath of that bad decision. So I'll never understand how you figured this was my only way out. Sometimes, and I'm one that's gonna always get on the men because I'm a man and I can only think like a man. I'll let you get on the women. But sometimes you just need to be a man. Like, you made these decisions and yeah, you might have known what the consequences would be later on, but you did it anyway. And then when it all comes to a head on the back end that she doesn't want to be with you because of the bad decisions you were making to cheat or, I don't know, rob banks or whatever you do, that caused the breakup. Now you don't want to deal with the spot that we're in because of my bad decisions. That's why I get on, I say this about men all the time, that we mess up so much stuff without even knowing that we are going down that road to mess it up. We may know this may not be 100% right, but we don't really fully see the big picture. Where if I had thought a little more on my decisions and actions, I wouldn't be in this spot. And then you get to the end, and well, my way out is to kill you because I don't want nobody to have you. And I'm not going to jail. So, I may as well just give my own self a life sentence too. That I can't answer. I'll never understand that.
Some men make that threat. Like, they make that threat throughout the relationship. You the only way out of here is dead, or, I'm going to, they'll tell you flat out, I'm going to kill you and then kill myself or whatever. But I'm talking about the case where there was nothing like that going on. It's just like you are left stunned with this was somebody feeling like this was their only option. I feel like a lot of our upbringing influences who we are and what we're capable of when it comes to things like that. I feel like when you grow up in, for lack of a better word, in chaos or a chaotic environment where the police are constantly being called to your home, or you are constantly leaving, your mom packs you and your siblings up and y'all leave and go somewhere else, like, because of what your dad is doing or whatever. I feel like that is either gonna make you do one of two things. You're either going to grow up and think that's normal, or you're going to grow up and say, I'm not doing anything like that. Right. So I feel like, our childhood plays a big role in it. But, even at that, yes, it can influence you. But at some point, especially if you know that's where it came from, at some point you have to take responsibility and accountability and say, I can't keep blaming the fact that I can't stop getting high on the fact that I saw my mama getting high. At some point, I have to say, you know what, I'm grown enough to say I'm the one choosing this at this point.
So, this is something that I want to discuss, like men that hit on women, abuse women, even verbally, but really physically. Let's just discuss that. This is my thing. I don't. I said we were going to change the name of this podcast from Get a Love Like Mine to, man, I don't understand. I don't understand so much stuff here. I don't understand what a man would think if, let's say we have relationship problems, whatever it is. I drink and go out, or whatever our problem is. If you don't like it, then you and I get into a physical, I'm going to choke you, I'm going to shake you up, I'm going to throw you around the house. Well, as that man, what do you think that's going to make her do? Do you think she's going to have those heart emojis in her eyes after you? No, it doesn't work that way. And I don't understand that train of thought. What did you think she was going to want to do after you beat her up? She doesn't just magically go like, oh yeah, now I remember why I like you.
So it is like a cycle. So I can speak to this. Not only have I done training in it, I've experienced it. I've experienced it watching my parents, and I've experienced it personally. But I can speak to this cycle of, I get mad, I do something to you, you cry or bleed or whatever it is that is a reality check to me. I realize what I did to you, and I'm so super apologetic. And then we go through the honeymoon phase. They call it the honeymoon phase for a reason. It's not because of, we're newlyweds. It's because you're loving on me like it's new. Like, you just can't get enough of me. You're bringing me flowers and candy and all these things because you feel bad about what you did. And then I let my guard down because I think you really do love me. You just made a mistake. And then when I let my guard down, whatever I did the first time that made you mad, I do it again. Or it really doesn't even have to be something I did, but something triggers you again and you do it again. And then it's like a mind game almost with the woman, because every woman wants to believe their man loves them. Every woman wants their man's adoration. And you seem to only get it after he's done something wrong. So he does it, you tell him you're leaving, he begs you to stay, it's never going to happen again, and then you stay, and then it happens again, and then the cycle just keeps repeating.
One thing I want to add to that is people making excuses. I saw it growing up. We lived in ghetto. I'd see my dad beat my mom, or my mom had these boyfriends that beat her up. Sorry, we're not using that one. Because I have ex-co-worker guy I used to work with, great guy. He grew up in seeing his dad do wrong. It was years back in the time when the mom and dad were married, but the dad had a girlfriend next door on this side, and the next door on either side, he had kids.
Oh, okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. That the coworker, he's outside playing with these kids, kind of like Terrell Owen. Mm-hmm. Terrell Owen grew up in a house not knowing that those neighbors next door were his brothers and sisters. He just in the street playing with them. Mm-hmm. Well, this was kind of the same thing, and the coworker found out later on that not only he realized his dad was never there. He winked, say, man, my dad went out every single weekend chasing women. Mm-hmm. And once he got to be an adult and understood exactly what was going on, the mom begged him not to cut his dad off. She said, look, your dad did what he did. I forgave him. I need you to forgive him for the life that he lived. And he said it was hard. But my thing is, he took what he saw and not used that as, well, this is the way I'm going to live my life. No, he looked at that dysfunction, the things that his dad was doing wrong, and said, this is exactly what I'm not going to do. When I have kids, I'm going to be right there for my kids. I'm not going to have your brothers and sisters next door with that lady and some more on this side of the house and, just sleeping with the whole neighborhood. So we're not going to use that as an excuse, I grew up in that, that's why I pack a pistol everywhere, because I saw nothing but gun. Unless you're autistic or retarded and you can't think for yourself, if you have common sense, then you can't hide behind these excuses. That's just the way it was when we grew up. Well, you can't think for yourself? Mm-hmm. So, no, we're not going to use that excuse as that's why I am the way I am. That's a perfect reason for you to turn and do something different.
Yeah, I agree. And that applies in more than just, domestic abuse. That applies in drug use, alcohol use,
don't want to work,
stealing, being lazy, just, whatever the case. What you saw from your parents is not a life sentence to what you would be, or what your life could be, especially if it's wrong. Some people grow up and they don't see anything wrong with that. I thought about it when I was saying it about the police coming to your house every weekend. Sometimes when you live in that's not traumatic to you.
You don't see nothing wrong with it.
But if you never not one time had to pick up the phone and call 911. Calling 911 for the first time can be traumatic. Like, just to, hear the person on the other line asking you, and then the police showing up at your house, it could be traumatic if that's not what you grew up in. Even if they weren't coming to your house, if you lived in some apartments or projects where they were coming to your neighbor's house all the time, it gets to be where you like, oh, this is just normal behavior. But if you never saw that or never experienced that, it can be traumatic to the point where you don't really know where your help is supposed to come from. I'll speak to my own experience. Of course, with my parents, my dad was abusive to my mom. I never knew him to be abusive to anyone else. To be fair, I only knew of 2 other women that he had relations with after my mom. 2 women who, the first one, they were together like maybe 4 years. And the second one, they probably were together maybe 4 years as well. And then after that, well, really after I got grown, I don't know what he was doing. He could have had a whole wife. No, I'm just playing. I just didn't know what he was doing. But I'm saying during my childhood, him and my mom divorced when I was 7. So from 7 to 18, I only knew 2 other women that I never knew him to be abusive to. Doesn't mean that he wasn't. I just never saw it. I really never saw it with my mom except one time, which was the last time, and that's when we left. But I never recall my mom calling the police. Like, I never saw the police. He pulled a gun on her. And, if a stranger pulled a gun on you, I would think you would call the police. But because this was her husband and she had love for him, I don't recall her ever calling the police. And she's told me, like, the abuse was pretty regular. I never recall the police being at our house or whatever. So whatever it was, she didn't think that was where she was going to get help. And then in my own experience, when I was in high school, I had a boyfriend. He and I went together from 9th grade to 12th grade. And in 12th grade, he cheated on me. And then started becoming like abusive once I started letting it be known that I'm not going to be with you anymore. And so one night, it was like December in my 12th grade year, he came and picked me up as if we were going on a date and took me to this like empty field. And for context, I was 17. There were no cell phones. There was no GPS. You either knew how to get somewhere or
y'all
you didn't.
Y'all didn't have a CV radio?
No, we didn't have any of that. So when I left with him, it was pretty much...
you just out there.
Yeah, and I'm relying on his sense of direction to get us where we're going. And he took me to this like empty field. I remember like big lights, almost like lights you would see on a football field at nighttime. And I don't know if he was trying to rape me or beat me up. I don't know what. I just know he reached over and just, because as soon as he parked the car, I'm like, what are we doing here? And then he just reached over and grabbed my clothes, and he like reached his hands in my pants and pulled my panties up so far that they ripped. And so I'm fighting for my life, but I didn't get out of the car because I didn't know where I was. And no one was there. There were no other cars. And so literally when it was over, I didn't have no choice but to ride home with him. Like, I had to rely on him to take me back home because I didn't know, I didn't have anything. I didn't have a phone or a sense of direction to know where we were. To even like, even if I said I'm gonna walk, I wouldn't have known anything. And so he brought me back home, and in my mind, it never once dawned on me to call the police. Like, I feel like at this point in my life, that was 30 years ago. At this point in my life, if one of my daughters came in at 17 saying, you know, this boy did this to me, I would be ready to call the police. But at that time, like I said, it never even crossed my mind that was an option. Like, where do you go for help when you're in a situation like that? The lady from the news, I don't know if she had ever gone to the police, but she clearly had gone to her daughter, like her and her daughter had discussed it, and they came up with a plan, although that plan didn't work. I feel like if you thought it was so bad to the point where you didn't want him to know where you live, maybe you should have gotten a protective order from the police, or, you know, just something. I know a protective order is just a piece of paper, but at least it puts a person on notice. And maybe if he would have known I could go to jail if I go within 200 feet of her house, then maybe it would have deterred him. You know what I mean? But like from my own personal experience, calling the police was never even crossed my mind. And that boyfriend was abusive to me. And then I had another boyfriend that was abusive to me. He wasn't abusive at first, and it was just one time. It was almost funny at this point because he and I were arguing. He decided, we were in the car. He decided, let me out the car. And we were a good 5 miles from my apartment. And so I let him out, and I drove by for a little while, and he wouldn't talk to me, so I drove home. And I'm in the house on the phone, kikiing. Yeah, he got out the car, blah, 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 talking to my homegirl. And next thing you know, he walks in the house and walks right up to me and slaps me off the phone. And yeah, I can laugh about it now, but at the time, I was in complete shock that he would put his hands on me. And the part that's funny is that he says, how could you leave me out there and just come home? Like, what did you expect? If you're going to be a diva, let me out the car and then not talk to me while I'm driving next to you. What did you expect me to do? Like, that's crazy to me. Well, anyway, yeah. So he slapped me. That never even crossed my mind to call the police. It never even dawned on me to get a protective order, to get a restraining order, to call his mama and tell his mama, hey, look what your son did. It never even dawned on me that I could look for help somewhere. And then finally, the last time was with my first husband. My first husband was abusive to me. Again, never even crossed my mind to call the police. It never even dawned on me that they could help me. So when you're in a situation like that, I know you can't really speak to it because you're not the woman. I mean, I know women can be abusive, but it's the same situation. When women are abusive to men, you don't see men going to calling the police saying she hit me.
Actually, one of my very close friends was dating this chick for years, and he had gotten attached to her kids and all that, but that was and he blamed it on her childhood growing up. She had dysfunction with her mom or whatever, but that was one of her outlets. When she got angry, here come these hands, and she would always hit on him. That was the very first thing she did.
Wow. And
before long, some men would use that as an excuse to, okay, this is the only reason I'm going to hit you back. You hit me first.
Right.
It's still wrong. Mm-hmm. So, but he never hit her back because the way we were raised, we weren't raised to hit women. But he broke up with her. Mm-hmm. He got away from her because this is not right, and you can't control your anger and your emotions or whatever it is that makes you think this is my solution to our problem. I'm gonna physically harm you. Mm-hmm. So he broke up with her, And he was like, I don't know, she just needs to find a way to control her anger. Like, I really love her, but I'm not going to put up with that. But one thing that people need to realize, like you said all those times, is no one ever knows where to seek help or what I should do next. Should I call 911? Should I tell my parent? You need to say something to somebody instead of just, maybe you tell one of your friends that don't give the greatest advice anyway.
You see so many stories of women who are in prison for murdering their partner, and they say he was abusive to me. And then they say, well, did you ever call the police? No. Well, did you tell anybody? No. Like, they keep these things to themselves, and then when they finally stand up for themselves, it's no proof that it ever even happened, and they end up in prison. So you really, you've got to... I was going through my phone this morning because I was going through trying to make a guest list. Oh my God, we're going to talk about wedding planning in another podcast. But anyway, I have the domestic violence hotline number saved in my phone. And when I saw it, I was like, why do I have this number in my phone? But there's got to be someone that you can call when something is going on, even if you don't want to call the police, even if you don't want to, let's start here. Sometimes for us, for black people, it's dangerous to have to bring the police in your house, especially when they don't know what they're walking into. You see it all the time, them walking into a house and getting aggressive with the wrong person. The man called the police because he's saying the woman did something. The police come in and charge the woman up, don't even notice that she got a nosebleed. Like, you grabbed the wrong one. So it's already a coin toss when you call the police of what kind of service you're gonna get. But there's got to be someone you can tell, your parents, your best friends, a co-worker, someone who, if push came to shove and you ended up having to literally defend yourself to the point where you take somebody's life, you have to have some kind of proof to show. Even if you don't tell anybody, you got to document it. Take pictures. Every time he puts his hands on you and you got fingerprints on your neck, take pictures. If you got bruises on your arms or legs, take pictures and put the timestamp on them so that you can prove this man has been beating me for years, or somebody has. At least if you have the pictures, you have something. But just that whole experience of not telling the police, it made me think about Meg Thee Stallion and Tory Lanez. So I recently watched the documentary. It's been so many documentaries ever since he got sentenced. I'm sure most of you know, but if you don't, Meg Thee Stallion is a rapper. She had some sort of relationship with a singer, Canadian singer by the name of Tory Lanez. It was all over the news that there was a shooting. There was a trial. He was found guilty of possessing a handgun in a vehicle and shooting that handgun. I do not believe that he aimed at her, but because the charge was not like shooting her, it was not assault. But he ended up shooting her in the feet, both of her feet. And so I had never seen the body cam footage of when the police showed up. When it first came out, you saw like helicopter footage of her getting out of the vehicle, limping backwards. And with every step that she's taking backwards, you could see bloody footprints. So that was what I saw when it first came out. But since this documentary came out, they showed the body cam footage of the police and all that. The first time they interviewed her, once the police handcuffed her and asked her what happened to her feet, she said, I stepped on glass. And then it came out later that she said this was right after the stuff happened with George Floyd. Nobody was trusting the police at that time. She said she didn't want to say that he shot her or that there was a gun with them because she didn't know what the police were going to do to them. Like, the police treated them all like suspects. They didn't treat her like a victim. She literally was handcuffed on the side of the road, bleeding from her feet. And his bodyguard or driver, whatever he was, and her best friend were all laid out in the street, hands behind the head. Everybody got handcuffed.
Everybody's suspect.
Yeah. So she didn't want to say, he shot me because, you didn't know what was going to happen.
It might escalate, huh?
Yeah, it might escalate and we all end up dead. So, I don't know how she grew up. I know she grew up here in Houston, but maybe calling the police just was never an option. Maybe it was just never something she thought to do. And I'm just here to tell you guys, I say my prayers daily, and I want to pray for anybody that's going through this type of situation. I pray that you find someone that you can rely on for help. If you're in that situation, I know sometimes we rely on ourselves and we think we're going to be strong enough to leave. And sometimes we are. Like with my first boyfriend, I left after that incident. The one who slapped me, I didn't leave after that. Because that really was the only time that had ever happened. But I didn't even think it would happen again. And it didn't. With my husband, my first husband, I left. I mean, I didn't leave after that, but I made a plan to leave after that. Like, after that, I knew I was leaving. It took me a couple of months, but I knew I was not going to stay married to anyone who would do me the way he did me. But it never dawned on me. In my mind, it was like, I have to be strong and do this on my own. So I'm praying for you guys in hopes that you find someone you can rely on, someone, hopefully, that you could go to the police and say, this person hit me and, get the proper paperwork. If they end up in jail, sometimes people deserve to go to jail.
And let me add this relationship-wise. If you're with someone and your relationship gets violent, whether it's them violent towards you or maybe you're violent towards them. Like, I've heard people make the comment, I was so angry I could have, hit you, or, if I'd had a stick out, whatever. But if you're with someone that brings that side of you out, you're probably with the wrong person. It's a very good possibility, and vice versa. If you bring that out in somebody else, just like you said, that went on with your parents, but you never saw your dad act that way towards another woman. Well, sometimes if it only happens once, like, this is not with everybody you date, but there may be some people that just bring a different level of anger out in you. Well, that's a sign that you're probably with the wrong person. You need to find someone else, because you may go and meet someone else and they may look similar or whatever, but you never get your blood pressure up or your anger levels up that high when you're with this person. You have to look at these type of things. Don't just keep going down this road as if life is going to mysteriously fix itself, but there's red flags all over the road and you're just ducking around each one of them.
But I feel like being abusive is a level of control. It's a level, like, I'll just use the example of spanking your child. When you decide you are going to spank your child, now there are some parents who are just flat out abusive and they'll hit the child for anything. I'm talking about rational parents who, when they decide to spank their child, it is a level of control. I am trying to discipline you so that you know what you're doing was wrong, and that there are consequences to your actions. If I tell you don't go up the stairs, and I'm sitting in the living room and your feet come out the ceiling because you were upstairs when I told you not to go up there, and I spank you, it is because I am trying to reinforce what I told you. So I would assume that when a person, I'm not just going to say a man, when a person is abusive to their partner, that it is also I told you not to do that type thing, or I don't want you to do that type thing. And it's kind of like I don't have the words to say it. So I'm hoping that these actions, these hands that I put on you, reinforce to you how serious I am when I say I don't want you to do that. And when that's the case, it's not going to matter whether it's the right person or not. You're not the right person. Something is wrong with you that you think you should have that level of control over anybody. Nope. The person you're dating is not your kid. You can't tell them what to do. So if you see yourself bubbling up to the point where I have to put my hands on you to reinforce what I'm saying, then I need to reassess what I'm saying. And then look at it like, you're not the right one for me because you don't coincide with the things that I want. But I'm not the right one for you either, because I can't control my hands when you don't do right. That don't mean this person brought it out of you, so you should just go on to the next person. Hey, if you have a problem keeping your hands to yourself, you might need to check that out before you get in relations with anybody.
And see, that's another thing that we had discussed, that going back to you saying, that happened with your mom and your dad, but you never saw your dad do it again. Well, to me, that's one of those incidents where it was just you and I weren't good for each other. Mm-hmm. But if this is the end result in everybody you meet, mm-hmm. then it's probably you. You need, you know what I'm saying? You need to fix your own self.
I agree.
So it happens both ways. So we're not just gonna. I know people that had a coworker that he'd been married at least 5 times, something like that. But all his relationships, they kind of took the same path, and somewhere along the line, he ended up putting his hands on them, and they all they ended the same way, pretty much. Mm-hmm. Well, in an incident like that, that's not. I mean, you're picking different women, but they're going down the same path. That's you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need to fix your own self.
Okay. Well, I think we've talked that part to death. Let's do a quick Ask the Amoses. Remember, if you guys have questions that you want answered, advice on love, relationships, friendship, parenting, anything of that nature, feel free to send us an email with the subject line Ask the Amoses to getalovelikeminepodcast at gmail.com. And in this particular talk, the question that we have, which also led to this discussion, is what do you do when you have left the person who was abusive to you, but you want to go back?
Okay, and it happens. Mm-hmm. There are times, like I said earlier, a friend of mine, the woman was abusive to him, but he had grown attached to her kids. Mm-hmm. And he loved her too as well. Like, years had passed, and they aren't enemies, but they're not what they were. They still talk on the phone periodically. So you want to go back. There's nothing wrong with that. But here's what the Bible says about that. In Proverbs, it says there's nothing wrong with going back as long as you can see there's been a change in that person's heart. Mm-hmm. So don't just listen to these great words, because these words might be telling you, oh, I just don't want nobody else to have you. I just ain't figured out how I can keep you, because I keep pushing you away when I put my hands on you. So one of the biggest things that you need to look for is, has this person had a change of heart? If their heart has changed, then their mindset will change and they won't do the things they were doing to push you away. But again, be mindful of people saying things that they think you want to hear just to come back.
That's that honeymoon phase that I talked about. Like, they tell you, oh, it'll never happen again, baby. I love you.
I made the mistake.
I changed. But you got to see the actions. Love, forgiveness, those are action words. Like that, those are words that you have to see things change before you will know that it's true. A person's words and their actions, that's why people say actions speak louder than words. Their actions will show you that they love you quicker than their words will. And that way men won't be able to play that mind game with you, where when you're in the honeymoon phase, you want to believe them. You want to believe that this will never happen again. But if you see it, I feel like you'll be able to tell the difference. But I wouldn't advise anybody to go back. It just, everybody's time is the time. Now, if years have passed and you guys cross paths again and you talk to that person and realize that they really changed, but if, you guys just broke up for 2 months and they're trying to come back, don't fall for it. But anyway, thank you guys for listening. Again, if you have questions, send them to our getalovelikeminepodcast@gmail.com. We appreciate you guys. We're praying for you. And we hope you enjoyed this episode. Happy Sunday.